that piece kind of combined two obsessions of mine, and one is with the 19th century moment of the passage from Romanticism to modernism, which I feel that Baudelaire embodied and why I taught him for so many years. And the reason I taught Baudelaire and Rimbaud in a course which only had two poets, really the two of them, it was a course called Poetry and Art. And every year I would go back and forth between which one I preferred. Do I prefer Rimbaud this year or Baudelaire, right? But I felt that that the Impressionist and the Expressionist attitudes toward art making kind of divide the human mind in half, right? And you couldn't live on one side or the other forever. And so every year I never knew which one I was going to be, whether I was going to be, the expressionist who preferred Baudelaire, or the impressionist who preferred Rimbaud, or the Dada who preferred Rimbaud, or the surrealist that preferred, Baudelaire. I didn't know which one I was going to be. But I have to say that in the end, Baudelaire won me over in the long term. And I felt that he had been so brave, and that his relationship with Jeanne Duval, who was a Haitian woman, had really enabled him to be that brave, to do what he did. We're talking about Black postmodernism. I really feel that the situation of the Black diasporized individual is the embodiment of postmodernism avant la lettre, before it became a word. And I thought of Jeanne Duval, Baudelaire's partner, as the first postmodernist. And I felt that she was leading a postmodernist life, this beautiful Black girl in Paris who had emigrated from Haiti they met in 1840, but I guess she was in Paris by 1836 or so. That her experience had led the way for him to make the leap, a huge, huge leap that he made, really, from Romanticism to modernism. He was faced every day of his adult life dealing with a woman who was living in a postmodernist world. And he didn't just, they lived together for 20 years, so, it was way beyond sex. What can I say? It was a fully engaged, complete life. And he didn't just watch Jeanne live her life as a postmodernist woman. He had to be part of it at certain times. And, he lost many jobs. It's a famous story of how he got his dream job of being the editor of a literary journal outside of Paris. And when Jeanne showed up, and his employers looked at her and said, "What is this?" And he said, "Well, this is the woman I live with." And they said, "Thank you very much," and they sent him back to Paris, and that was the end of that. So he lost jobs, they lost apartments, many things happened to him. So he was actually living her life with her. And I felt that this accounted for the incredible ability to distance himself from the world that he was in, and to imagine all these other worlds that enabled modernism. I don't know if you'd call him a full modernist, but he was certainly a proto-modernist. I think of him as the father of modernism. And so I have always been obsessed with him as a figure, and I've been almost as obsessed with Michael Jackson. Okay. Well, Michael Jackson was always a figure that we all lived with. Some of us didn't pay that much attention to him for many years at a time. He just kind of dropped out of your span of consciousness. But he was a genius. I mean, but a genius of which we do not get endowed many times in a century, or even 2 centuries. And he was so responsible for the vision of his own career. I mean, I know that people sometimes think that, you know, someone like that is just a creation of the forces, but Michael left Motown because he knew Motown could not take him where he wanted to go. He left with a vision. It took him a little while, but he knew that he just as the Modernists were the first artists to make art without God. You understand? They were the first artists to make art without God. They had to become God in order to make art. There is no one with a more godlike vision of art than Michael Jackson. He actually believed that he could unite the entire world through his music. And he set out in the most self-conscious way to do that. I mean, people may give Quincy Jones the credit for Thriller, but I can tell you it was Michael every step of the way. Every track on Thriller was crafted for a different audience. I mean, the big moment was getting Eddie Van Halen to play the rock guitar on Beat It. He made Thriller into the perfect crossover album. There's never been anything like it before, and there may never be anything like it again. And then he proceeded to craft himself. He changed his body, he changed his face to become the absolute embodiment of the entire world. Now, you know, he did get obsessed, he did go too far. But there was a moment, sort of around the Dangerous album. There was a moment around the Dangerous album when I descended myself into Michael Jackson fandom after he died, and so I learned about how everybody talks about him. There was Black Michael Jackson, and at the very, very end, there was White Michael Jackson, and in between, there was Mixed Race Michael Jackson. Now, that was the moment when he was in his early 30s, and it was at the height of his beauty. And the effort and the image of Michael Jackson, that is the image all around the world, whether you are in China or in Africa or in Italy, the image of Michael Jackson that is in everyone's head is Mixed Race Michael Jackson, across the board. So he actually did make himself into a universal physical figure. And he made his music into a universal music. I mean, how many people are eulogized by 1 billion tears, you know? 1 billion people crying. 1 billion. And I thought, what a price, and such a destroyed life to pay for that kind of vision. And I thought about Charles. And it was just too much. The comparison was just too close. Charles was the first of the modern. There will never be another modernist with a vision as total as Michael Jackson. You can't do that. You can't support that again. And yet, when you look at both their lives, they were so destroyed with this desire to be God, to do for the world with their art. And so, I mean, you know, they even both had spectacular public trials, you know. And I mean, you know, Charles was put on trial for obscenity for his book, and I just thought, well, you know, I have to be able to find images that will make this point, and I did.